Well, good afternoon. This is Pat Cruzy with the Big Iron Livestock Market Wrap-Up, and I've got Daryl Holliday from Frankfort, Kansas, with Country Futures. And Daryl, it's always a pleasure to have you on and talk through these markets and get your perspective. I did a little intel earlier today and was doing some reading, and all I'm hearing is just, and it's kind of scary. It's like uh, continues to be a bigger and bigger positive message out there, and optimism. Yet there's several leading consultants out in the country that have been saying this thing was over in December and January, and to start shorting everything. Now they're starting to change their minds, and at some point here, where does it end? Uh, we're seeing record prices every other week, since last fall, and it just keeps going. And now we're getting some optimism even from the producers who are, I'm reading, with some of this moisture we've seen the last 4 weeks, that are interested in breeding some heifers and uh, looking for those a $2,000 calf here for next year, instead of taking the risk on buying calves for 2,000 and hoping they can hit a home run next year on yearlings. Uh, what's your thoughts, Daryl? What are you hearing out there, and what's your thoughts of this market reaction last week?
Well, it's amazing. It's a tribute to still the fact that we built such a strong demand base for the beef, and the consumer is wanting more and more protein, more and more quality protein. Beef fits right into that, right what they want. And yes, prices are at record high at the retail level on the beef, and that's going to. But we have to go up because that's demand got us here, and now we're dealing with a very short supply. And you just were talking about the fact that people might have incentivized to start holding these heifers back, which I think we've probably started. Although I will admit to you, right now, if you look at the heifers as a percent of the fed cattle slaughter since the first of the year, January, we are not holding back any more heifers than we did a year ago. As what I'm saying is, they're making up the same percentage, very close to the same number. So we weren't, but what that all that tells
Yeah,
you is we weren't holding them back 5 months ago. Okay,
right.
I would suggest to you that we are. But so if we're going to do that, just think about how. Let's suppose right now, by golly, we're going to start seeing a big surge in the last 6 months of holding back heifers. Well, then the next 6 months is going to be the tightest feeder cattle supply you've ever seen, because that's the
Right.
problem. Is it
Now they're
short?
not going to
But
the
the
market.
cash market, cash fed cattle market, the packers are going to have to do something. But remember, we have more capacity now, and you're going to see some packers that'll cut back hours. But see, the minute they do that, then the beef goes up. But that's the whole process. We've got to run the beef up high enough that somebody decides they're going to eat less. They have to. Well,
Yes.
you can't eat what you don't produce. But we're very current. I know people say, "Oh, we're backing up." We're not backing up any cattle. Matter of fact, I'm going to suggest to you that in the last 3 weeks we maybe pulled some cattle forward, and in the next 60 days we will definitely pull some cattle forward. What I mean, why they're doing is they're getting into the heat. They don't want to overfeed these cattle and have
Right.
some of them have trouble, and they look at that price and go, "Forget it. They can have them." Now, the reason they ever held cattle before was they didn't like what it would cost to replace them, and so. But that dilemma is going to be there for a long time. We're not, barring some big demand disaster, some economic disaster, you're not going to transition to just big drop. We'll have our, I
Yeah.
remind people that 2 weeks ago today, we had the feeders down $7 to $8 at one time during the session, and then rallied back. At the end of the week. Why? Because there's one rumor, a screwworm rumor, a rumor something here or there.
Right.
You're going to see those, and you can see those in the chart you're looking at. There are days in which we come down. There's weeks in which the futures have trouble. But in the end, the
Yeah.
cash market is a straight up market.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And and the consumer,
Yeah.
you're not hearing any concerns,
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
feedback out there that consumers are complaining about current prices.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they'd rather buy it cheaper. But the problem is, what's your alternative? Well, you can slide over there and grab pork, which pork's going to grab a little bit more, but pork numbers are tightening up. You can slide over there and buy chicken or a poultry product, but once again, they aren't in an abundance of supply. And you got to couple that with the fact that there's a big demand for just protein as itself. The meat protein or poultry protein, all in very high demand. Turkey production's down and will stay down, I think, most of 2025 from where it was a year ago. And so, you know, it we are rationing what we have, and
Yeah.
that's the process the market has to go through and get it done. And it does put some packers in some tight margins. I know that, and they are struggling. But remember back, I remind them back in 20 and 21, you buried a market so that you could make $1,000 to $1,500 a head, and so now that caused a lot of cow liquidation, and that's how markets have to, that's the ebb and flow of a marketplace. But the one
Right.
underlying factor that I don't think anybody understood was how beef demand was building and building and getting stronger every year. And now when the supplies get tight, it's really gone further than many people thought it would. As you
Anybody
said, there were
envisioned.
tons of people. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. What do you, uh, there's a lot of these barbecue sales that are going to start coming up here.
Mm-hmm.
We've got one
Mm-hmm.
in the end of the month here in June. We've pulled some cattle forward actually that we're going to sell in a July sale. We've got some guys with yearlings that gains have been probably better than we thought in the sand hills. And so we're going to host a sale in June for some guys. And uh, t- those guys are asking, what do you think? Is there a better opportunity to just hold on to them and keep putting that cheap gain on them? And what is that level? What kind of critter do they get in trouble with? If they get them
Mm-hmm.
over much over 1,000 pounds here, does that cause an issue?
Yeah, I strongly believe that in my work that cattle coming off of grass, which is what you're talking about, a Flint Hills grass or Sand Hills grass, that the steer that weighs anywhere from 850 to 950 is still the ideal steer and will give you the most money. Now you might say, well, yeah, but I can grass them on up to over 1,000, and I'm putting it on cheap. Yeah, but if you ever measure that, you would find that once that animal gets to 9 1/4, 9 1/2,
Slows down.
he has to consume so much grass just to maintain that body weight. And I bet if you measured his gain per day, you'd see it drop off.
Drop
And
off. Yeah.
and and that's why, just to make my point, that is why people love to buy grass cattle on the other end. Why? Is because they know people tend to leave them out there a little too long, and they actually kind of their condition becomes just to the point that they're kind of thin, and they'll land in that feedlot and they'll gain 5 pounds a
Take
day,
off.
and that's
Yeah.
what they'll do. And that's why I've tended to always find, and what I've done is that yeah, and I'm sure it depends on the animal. And on the other hand, I think the heifer, once you get over 8 1/4, 8 1/2, you really hurt some things, and the person buying them on the other end doesn't really like that. So those are the two numbers. And I know people, oh, we sold some 1,000 pound grass steers. Yeah, but I'm
Sure.
telling you, yeah, it probably hurt you about 75 pounds. You would have been better off to have another group of cattle out there eating that grass than that animal. That's what I would try to say.
Yeah. They just become more inefficient at those at
Right,
those
right.
levels.
They
Yeah.
need to be eating a big high forage grain diet, and they just can't literally consume enough to really put on the gain at that time. When they're eight and
Yeah.
8 1/2, sure they
Right.
can, but 9 1/4, 9 1/2, that's my opinion.
That's about the point. Yep. And that's where these guys are telling me they want to get them pulled off maybe here in June
Yeah,
because they're getting to that point. So
that's right. Yeah,
very
I bet
good.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And and with the cash cattle market, I guess I kind of dropped the ball a little bit there. We went up $6.80 in the 5 state area average last week. We're at 236.62. That's incredible. Kansas is 231.12, and Nebraska basically 242, just under 242. I mean, that's that's the whole averages, and those are just big numbers. But I would think we'll be steady to higher this week. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
Okay.
So
Very good. Well, great. Well, Daryl, appreciate your time, your input, and always joy to visit with you and get your perspective on the markets. we'll look forward to catching up with you next Monday again. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Matt.
All
All right, bye.
right.